July 30th, 1975. A hot summer afternoon in suburban Detroit. A man walked into the parking lot of the Machus Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He was there for what he believed would be a meeting. He was seen waiting. He reportedly became frustrated when no one arrived on time. Then, he disappeared. No confirmed trace of him has ever been found. No body, no murder weapon, no confirmed crime scene. More than half a century later, investigators are still trying to answer one question. What happened to Jimmy Hoffa? His disappearance became one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. But to understand why his disappearance attracted worldwide attention, we first need to understand who Jimmy Hoffa was and how he became one of the most powerful men in the United States. James Riddle Hoffa was born on the 14th of February, 1913 in Brazil, Indiana. His father, John Cleveland Hoffa, worked as a coal miner. When Jimmy was only 7 years old, his father died from lung disease, leaving the family struggling financially. His mother, Viola Hoffa, eventually moved the family to Detroit, Michigan. Hoping for better opportunities, Detroit was rapidly becoming America's automotive capital. Factories employed hundreds of thousands of workers, but working conditions were often harsh. Long hours, low wages, little job security. These experiences shaped Hoffa's view of organized labor. He saw firsthand how difficult life could be for working families. As a teenager, Hoffa left school and began working at a grocery warehouse owned by the Kroger Company. The work was physically demanding. Employees unloaded heavy crates for long hours with little protection or bargaining power. One day, management demanded workers unload a shipment of strawberries that spoiled quickly. Hoffa realized the company urgently needed the work completed. He organized fellow workers to refuse until management negotiated better conditions. The strategy worked. The workers won concessions. For the young Hoffa, it was a powerful lesson. When workers acted together, they could negotiate from a position of strength. That experience launched his lifelong involvement in labor organizing. In the 1930s, Hoffa joined the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, commonly known as the Teamsters. Originally formed in 1903, the union represented drivers who transported goods by horse-drawn wagons. As trucks replaced horses, the union expanded rapidly. By the time Hoffa joined, trucking had become essential to the American economy. Nearly everything depended on transportation: food, fuel, steel, cars, medicine. If truck drivers stopped working, supply chains slowed, factories shut down, stores ran out of products. Hoffa quickly understood the importance of that leverage. He proved to be an exceptional organizer. He recruited new members, negotiated contracts, resolved labor disputes, and gained a reputation for determination. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Hoffa climbed through the Teamsters ranks. Unlike some labor leaders who spent most of their time in offices, Hoffa frequently met workers directly. He visited warehouses, loading docks, truck terminals. He listened to drivers' concerns and built loyalty by securing wage increases and improved benefits. Supporters viewed him as a fearless advocate for working people. Critics argued that he was willing to use aggressive tactics to achieve his goals. Regardless of opinion, few doubted his effectiveness. Membership in the Teamsters continued to grow. Following World War II, the United States experienced enormous economic growth. Factories expanded. Highways stretched across the country. Consumer demand increased dramatically. Everything depended on trucks delivering goods across America. As trucking expanded, so did the influence of the Teamsters. The union negotiated contracts affecting hundreds of thousands of workers. Its decisions influenced wages across entire industries. By the early 1950s, Hoffa had become one of the union's most influential figures. His name was recognized throughout the country. In 1957, Jimmy Hoffa became president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Under his leadership, the union became one of the largest and most powerful labor organizations in the United States. Membership eventually exceeded 2 million workers. Perhaps Hoffa's greatest achievement was the National Master Freight Agreement, first negotiated in 1964. Instead of separate contracts in different regions, many long-haul trucking companies agreed to a nationwide contract covering wages, benefits, and working conditions. For many drivers, this brought greater consistency and stronger bargaining power. To supporters, Hoffa had helped improve the lives of countless working families. To his critics, however, his growing influence raised serious questions. As Hoffa's power increased, so did scrutiny. For decades, federal investigators alleged that certain organized crime figures sought influence within parts of the Teamsters because of the union's size, financial resources, and pension funds. It is important to distinguish between proven facts and allegations. Multiple government investigations examined relationships between Hoffa and individuals associated with organized crime. Some convictions involved corruption-related offenses. At the same time, many broader claims made over the years have never been conclusively proven in court. The subject remains one of the most debated aspects of Hoffa's career. Historians continue to separate documented evidence from speculation. One of Hoffa's most determined opponents was Robert F. Kennedy. As chief counsel to the Senate Select Committee on Improper Activities in Labor and Management, and later as U.S. Attorney General, Kennedy pursued investigations into organized crime and labor corruption. Public hearings often placed Hoffa and Kennedy face-to-face. The exchanges became famous. Each accused the other of abusing power. Television audiences watched intense questioning as Kennedy challenged Hoffa about union activities and alleged misconduct. The rivalry became one of the defining political conflicts of the era. Neither man was willing to back down. The battle between them would continue for years and would eventually help shape the next chapter of Jimmy Hoffa's life. By the early 1960s, Jimmy Hoffa was one of the most influential labor leaders in America. At the same time, he was the subject of multiple federal investigations. These inquiries focused on allegations of corruption involving labor unions and organized crime. While Hoffa consistently denied many of the broader allegations made against him, prosecutors pursued several criminal cases based on evidence they believed supported federal charges. After years of investigations, 2 cases proved especially significant. One involved jury tampering during an earlier trial. The other involved fraud related to the Teamsters pension fund. Both cases would have lasting consequences for Hoffa's career. In 1964, Hoffa was convicted in federal court of attempting to influence a jury during a previous legal proceeding. Later that same year, he was also convicted in a separate case involving pension fund fraud. Hoffa appealed the convictions through the courts, maintaining that he had been treated unfairly. However, the convictions were ultimately upheld. The legal battle that had lasted for years was coming to an end. In 1967, Hoffa began serving his federal prison sentence. For a man who had spent decades leading one of America's largest labor unions, prison marked a dramatic change. Although he was no longer free, Hoffa continued to follow developments within the Teamsters. He remained determined to return to public life. Meanwhile, leadership within the union continued without him. The organization he had helped build was changing. On the 23rd of December 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon commuted Hoffa's prison sentence. A commutation reduces a sentence but does not overturn a conviction. One important condition accompanied Hoffa's release. He was prohibited from participating in Teamsters union activities until 1980. The restriction became one of the most controversial aspects of his release. Hoffa believed he should be able to return to the union immediately. The government disagreed. This disagreement would shape much of Hoffa's life after prison. After his release, Hoffa began meeting with former colleagues, supporters, and legal advisors. His goal was clear. He wanted to regain influence within the Teamsters. However, the union had new leadership, and many people opposed his return. Political disagreements, legal restrictions, and personal rivalries complicated the situation. Hoffa also challenged the conditions of his commutation in court, arguing that he should be allowed to participate fully in union affairs. Despite these efforts, his return never materialized. The events of the 30th of July 1975 remain among the most closely examined in modern American investigative history. According to the official investigation, Hoffa traveled to the Mafia Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He expected to meet several individuals connected to his ongoing efforts to return to union activity. When the meeting did not appear to begin on time, Hoffa reportedly expressed frustration to family members during telephone calls. Witnesses later reported seeing him in the restaurant's parking area. After that point, the confirmed timeline becomes far less certain. Despite extensive investigation, there has never been definitive public evidence establishing exactly what happened after those final confirmed sightings. When Hoffa failed to return home, concern quickly grew. Law enforcement agencies, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, launched a large-scale investigation. Detectives interviewed witnesses. They examined telephone records. They searched vehicles, buildings, and locations connected to the case. Over the years, investigators followed thousands of tips. Many proved unreliable. Others could not be verified. Despite decades of work, no definitive physical evidence has publicly resolved the disappearance. One reason the case continues to attract attention is the absence of definitive answers. Without confirmed physical evidence establishing exactly what occurred after Hoffa's last verified movements, investigators have been unable to fully reconstruct the events of that day. Over the decades, numerous theories have circulated in books, films, television programs, and on the internet. Some have suggested that Hoffa's remains were hidden beneath stadiums or other construction projects. Extensive investigations have found no evidence supporting many of these widely repeated claims. Law enforcement has periodically conducted searches at locations identified through new leads, but none has produced conclusive public evidence resolving the case. For historians, the distinction between documented facts and speculation remains essential. Although Jimmy Hoffa disappeared in 1975, the investigation did not end. For decades, federal, state, and local authorities continued reviewing evidence and following new leads. Whenever investigators received information that could be independently verified, they evaluated it using available forensic techniques. Over the years, this resulted in searches of several locations in and around Michigan. Despite these efforts, no publicly confirmed evidence has established what happened to Hoffa after his last verified movements on the 30th of July, 1975. The case remains open. Investigative methods have changed dramatically since the 1970s. When Hoffa disappeared, detectives relied heavily on witness interviews, fingerprints, photographs, and physical searches. Today, investigators also have access to advanced DNA analysis, digital mapping, ground-penetrating radar, and improved forensic laboratory techniques. In some historical cases, these technologies have helped identify unknown victims or clarify decades-old investigations. Authorities have occasionally revisited the Hoffa case using these modern tools. However, despite renewed examinations of various sites over the years, no publicly released evidence has conclusively resolved the mystery. The investigation illustrates both the strengths and limitations of forensic science. Technology can enhance evidence, but it cannot create evidence that was never recovered. Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance has inspired books, documentaries, films, podcasts, and countless news reports. With so much public interest, rumors naturally followed. One of the most famous claims suggested Hoffa had been buried beneath a major sports stadium. Extensive investigations have found no evidence supporting that story. Other theories have pointed to farms, warehouses, lakes, construction sites, or industrial properties. Some originated from anonymous tips, others came from individuals claiming insider knowledge. Investigators have consistently distinguished between credible leads supported by evidence and speculation that could not be verified. This distinction is essential. An unsolved case often generates many theories, but a theory is not the same as evidence. While the disappearance captured headlines, the Teamsters Union continued its work. Leadership changed over time, and the organization evolved as the American economy changed. The union continued representing workers in trucking, warehousing, logistics, and other industries. Hoffa's tenure remains a significant chapter in the history of organized labor. Supporters credit him with expanding membership and strengthening national contracts for many workers. Critics point to the legal controversies that surrounded his leadership. Both perspectives form part of the historical record. For labor historians, Hoffa represents more than an unsolved disappearance. His career reflects a pivotal period in American labor history: the growth of national trucking, the rise of powerful labor unions, the relationship between business, government, and organized labor, the increasing use of federal investigations to address corruption allegations. Understanding Hoffa's life helps explain broader changes in 20th century America. His story is therefore studied in courses on labor history, political history, and criminal justice, not because of the mystery alone, but because of the wider historical context. After decades of investigation, several points remain well established. Jimmy Hoffa became one of the most influential labor leaders in American history. He served as president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. He was convicted in federal court, imprisoned, and later had his sentence commuted. On the 30th of July, 1975, he disappeared after traveling to the Match's Red Fox restaurant in Michigan. He was later declared legally dead. his disappearance has never been publicly resolved. Beyond these documented facts, many details remain uncertain. Responsible historical reporting recognizes that uncertainty rather than filling the gaps with unsupported claims. Whether remembered as a determined union organizer, a controversial public figure, or the subject of one of America's most famous missing person cases, Jimmy Hoffa left a lasting mark on American history. His leadership influenced labor negotiations across the country. His legal battles highlighted the government's efforts to address corruption within organized labor. His disappearance continues to challenge investigators and historians alike. More than anything, the case reminds us that some historical mysteries remain unresolved despite decades of investigation. Sometimes history preserves the questions, even when it cannot provide complete answers. Jimmy Hoffa's story is one of influence, controversy, and uncertainty. He rose from modest beginnings in Indiana to lead one of the most powerful labor unions in the United States. His work shaped the lives of countless workers, while his legal battles and disappearance became part of American history. Decades later, the unanswered questions continue to draw attention, but the most enduring legacy is not the mystery itself. It is the impact he had on organized labor, the lessons learned from a complex investigation, and the reminder that historical understanding depends on careful evidence rather than speculation. Some cases reach a clear conclusion. Others remain open chapters in history. The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa is one of them.